I am Bryce Newberger, and this is the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix, Chapter 31. The gray dawn hung over the horizon as if the sun couldn't cut through the shadow of the lingering darkness. The sun's ambient rays shot through the mists like arrows of light. One of these shafts rested upon the bare chest of the boy. His head was reeling, his mind was drawing blanks. He wondered the same thing over and over. What happened? He last remembered lying with his face in the dirt as metal-clad boots approached. Blood streamed into his vision. It was warm, thick, and it had belonged to him. The marching connected with his numb body. He felt the first few footfalls stomp him, then all went numb. The only indication he was being trampled was his constant rocking. The metal wine press had all but drained the fluids from his body when they departed. His last true vision was of darkness and flame. After that came only feelings. He was drifting through space. He felt wind rushing over his blood-soaked figure. A warm body pressed against his. A soft, mysterious voice called out to him like an anchor to his consciousness. "Stay with me. You'll be all right." Then came nothing. No dreams, no visions, no sounds, and no thoughts. Just the same question. What happened? Eldrich slowly turned his head away from his chest to cast his gaze around the area. He was in a small wooden room, simple and cozy. He was apparently lying on a soft bed, and most peculiarly was the man staring at him. He looked incredibly handsome. His hair was short-cropped and white, despite his contrasted youthful appearance. His face bore no wrinkles or other marks of time. His skin was pale like ivory, and his eyes were amber like the golden sap of a tree. His garments were elegant and loose. They looked exceptionally comfortable despite their elaborate detail. "Who are you?" Eldrich croaked. His voice was so dry it felt as if his throat were a boar shaking off dried mud from a week-long mud bath. "I am," he began with a warm smile. Then after a long pause, he appeared to decide to finish his response. "A friend." Eldrich wasn't usually so affected by strangers, but this reply brought him a good amount of comfort. "Where am I?" Then realization flooded back. "The soldiers! My family! Are they okay?" The heartening smile dispirited. "They did not escape the wreckage of the battle. You, apart from ashes, are all that remains of your family." Like a 9-inch nail through the heart, Eldrich felt the crushing despair of loss. The world collapsed around him, and supporting walls disintegrated into nothingness. The floor that held him transformed into a sinking, endless abyss. With a fainting wooziness, Eldrich succumbed to his sorrow. Eldrich awoke later. How much so, he was unsure. The shafts of light had been replaced with twilight blue and cicada callings. He sat up from his bed and willed himself into a standing position. He stumbled to the door in a groggy stupor and pressed the light door ajar. The adjacent room was equally simple and humble. A fireplace, a table for a maximum of 4, and a few small windows, and no real elaborate furnishings made this room out to be a pauper's cabin. In the center of the floor sat the kind man, with his legs crossed and his head bowed. "I am not sure I'm ready to emerge once again, but your will be done." He spoke quietly yet aloud to no one but himself. He then lifted his head and looked at Eldrich while remaining seated. "Good to see you up and around. I've spent many watchful days awaiting your recovery. It seems to be progressing quicker than I had anticipated." "Who were you talking to?" Eldrich painfully inquired, as he remembered his vocal cords were still quite tender. "Ah, I was just praying," the man said with a dismissive tone. Eldrich remembered how the town ecclesiarch would wail and cry excitedly over the populace of Ridgewood. It had never looked anything like what he saw the man doing. "You were just talking, not praying," Eldrich accused haphazardly. "A prayer is just a conversation you have with the Creator. It does not have to be artsy and passioned or even overly reverent." Eldrich seemed to be taking the comment in with his face hardened into disgust. "Then here's my prayer. Creator, you murderer, bring my family back," he cried out as vindictive tears streamed his cheeks. The man stood up. Eldrich took an easy step back towards his room. He walked over to Eldrich with a speed much greater than anticipated. The boy fell backwards, but felt the slender yet unexpectedly strong arms catch him and hold him into a tight embrace. No words would have sufficed. No impassioned speech about the meaning of life or the comfort of eternity was given. The stranger hugged the boy tight and resilient. Eldrich wept openly from his heart and soul until he had no more tears or wails to give. As Eldrich awoke the next morning, he could hear a clamor coming from outside the cabin. The boy gingerly walked towards the front door. Attempting stealth, he let the door creak slowly open. There, in front of the cabin, was a small clearing before the forest wall. There stood the stranger, sword in hand, before a pile of logs. The blade he wielded reminded him of the blade that was dropped off at the shop a few days earlier, though now that he recalled, he wasn't sure how much time had passed. Of one thing he became infinitely certain. This man was the same who had brought in the impossible blade. Eldrich spied a bit closer. The man was holding the very sword he had delivered, but it couldn't be. That sword was stolen by Ox in their final moments together. The man, Mel, as Eldrich remembered his name, stooped down and picked up a thick log. With a little flick of his wrist, the wood was spinning in the air. The sun reflected off the blade as the expert moved it in a flash. When Eldrich finished blinking away the glare, there were 3 perfectly split pieces of wood lying at the hermit's feet. The boy hurried out to the man. "How did you do that?" he asked with sheer wonder. Mel smiled at the boy. "Good to see you awake." "Did you use magic?" Eldrich was undeterred from his inquisition. Mel chuckled. "No, I am no magician. That was just a bit of simple swordplay. The cutting was made possible by the blade. It's not the wielder. When you wield the right weapon, you can accomplish much." "That sword. You dropped it off to me. Why? You knew I couldn't sharpen it." "Because you needed it," Mel offered mysteriously. "But Ox took it," Eldrich recalled aloud. "How did you get it back?" "I found the boy, Ox, stumbling around, lost in the forest." Eldrich's guard rose up. "Is he here?" No, he isn't," Mel spoke in a somewhat somber tone. "I had him taken to an orphanage." "Why am I here, then?" "There is a plan set for you, before you were even born. I have been chosen to make sure that plan comes through." "Plan? Chosen? What are you talking about?" The young boy couldn't comprehend this talk of destiny, fate, and predestination. Mel stepped towards Eldrich and threw him the sword. The boy caught the featherweight sword and studied its entrancing craftsmanship. "The Creator has great things in store for you. I do not know what they are yet, but I do see much potential in you." Eldrich planted the blade in the dirt and stepped back from it. "I do not want anything to do with your Creator." "It is fortunate for you, then, that he wants everything to do with you, Eldrich Brinson." The child considered things for a moment or two, then asked, "Are you going to teach me how to use a sword?" Mel's eyes lit with a smirk. "Oh, much more than that." The boy frowned and pulled the sword from the dirt. "All right, I'll learn from you, but I don't want your Creator." He stepped towards his new instructor, swinging the sword, left and right, testing the impeccable balance. "Where do I begin?" Mel picked up a long stick and twirled it like an expert city street performer would twirl a baton. With a crisp snap, it stopped pointed at Eldrich's chest. "We start with your heart." Thank you for listening. I'm Bryce Newberger, and this has been the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to purchase the full book, then either look up New Books on the Google Play bookstore, NEU Books, or simply click the link in the description. The book is only $5, and I appreciate your support.